lot more sense after we lay some foundational. But what it is that I like to do is to first gauge and see, does anyone have a pressing question that you've just been dying to get answered? And you said, once I get the chance, I'm going to take advantage of it. So any pressing questions that you've just been dying to get answered about real estate, specifically about the estate planning component, or just in general? Okay, yes. So you can come right on up. And I like to start there because this is for you all. So.
Fantastic. Oh, great. Okay. First is, how does the trust work when there's a lien on the property?
Yes, you can go ahead and ask all three.
Does the insurance company honor a trust? And the third question is, how long will the bank continue to take payments when after the family member transitions? And then I also have a personal question, is there a difference between how the trust works if there is a mortgage or a responsible financial to like a car, still having a car loan on it? Do they handle that differently for you to inherit those things? And if so, what is the differences?
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much. All right, so it feels like I'm back in law school with just 4 questions all at once. All right, so thank you for those questions. And we're going to start with the first part. So most of us have heard of a trust before, right? We've oftentimes heard, I put my house in trust. That's kind of what we hear. That is not how a trust works. So what I hope everybody walks away knowing on today is that a trust is a person. And I want everybody to say that one with me. A trust is a person. What's a trust? A person. Why is that important? Because how many people here would say that I put my house in my sister? Who would ever say that? We'd never say I put my house in my sister, right? Well, when you say I put my house in trust, you're doing the same thing. We don't put our houses in a trust. We put them in the name of the trust. And this is something that I love to always use when it comes to our community, because when somebody didn't pay the light bill and the gas bill and the cable bill and they get turned off, in order to get them turned back on, who do those parents put the name of those utilities in? It's okay. It's okay. In the kid's name. We put the utilities in the kids' names. And why do we put the utilities in the kids' names? Because we burned up credit with them. A trust works the same way. You are taking the house out of your name and you're putting it in the name of a new person. Who's the trust? My trust has a name. The name of one of my trusts is the Living the Dream Legacy Revocable Living Trust. And that's because every day I remind my daughter she is living the dream. She did not have to grow up with 5 brothers and 3 sisters like her father. She didn't have to wear her older brother's hand-me-downs like her father. She gets whatever it is that she desires as long as she does well in school. So she's living the dream. So the trust is a person. You take that property out of your name and you put it into the name of the trust. When you first buy your house, you become the owner. On day one, you own the property. You get the deed. It's in your name. And when you put it in the name of the trust, you're saying, I no longer want to be responsible for it. I want my trust to be responsible. And because of that, if something bad happens to you, it now doesn't happen to the property. Because you don't own it, your trust owns it. So to answer the question, can you take it out of your name and put it in even if you have a mortgage? The answer is yes, absolutely. And you want to do that. And the reason you want to do it is because if you pass away and the property's still in your name, the mortgage company isn't going to take those payments anymore. They're not going to talk to your children. And the reason why is because they don't know if those are your children. And that's the reason why the trust is so beneficial, because you're telling the bank, if I die, I want you to talk to this person instead of me. And now the bank has to talk to the successor trustee, and the payment continues to get made. And then at which point, nobody misses a beat. There's no foreclosures happening. Everything gets to continue as if though you're still alive. The other part is that you asked about those other bills, like the car loans and the credit card bills. When a property is owned in the name of a trust, all of those other debts die with you. So I tell everyone all the time that I hope to die penniless with $1 million worth of debt, because my daughter will then never have to deal with any of that debt, because it dies with me. And she is the beneficiary of the trust, so she gets all of the houses, she gets all of the life insurance policies, she gets all of the brokerage accounts, and doesn't have to deal with any of that debt without anybody being able to go after the houses. So I think I answered 3 of them. Did I answer 3? Okay. Yeah, come on back to me.
I was saying, I don't know if I got lost in your explanation of it, because to me, it almost sounds like, and I don't want to sum you up incorrectly, that because the debt dies with the person that put it in the hands of the trust, and I'm the inheritant of the trust, I can now stake claim to those items, whether they had something owed on them or not, because the owed went with the person that transitioned.
So it sounds like you understood it perfectly. It sounds like you understood it perfectly. Exactly. There we go. So now we're getting to the truth of the matter.
Okay, so I'm gonna open up something else. So I know someone that Lily just happens to. That's why I have so many questions. That
Mm-hmm.
they put together the trust and everything, and prior to the transition of this person, they tried to use the trust and even go to the bank and say, "Hey, this person is transitioning. I'm the power of attorney," and they would not honor anything.
Whoa, 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 whoa. So, so we got to back up. So we were going in a good direction until you said power of attorney. All right, so you can go ahead and if you want to have a seat, and now I'm gonna. All right, so we'll parse this out. So one of the mistakes that happens in our communities is that we think when somebody says I'm going to get my affairs in order, what do we think they're doing? If somebody said I'm getting my affairs in order, what do you think they're doing? Getting their will. There you go. We've all heard about the will, correct? We know about the will. But when it comes to your estate planning, that is just one small part of it. If you were to go and build a deck, would you use just one tool? No. Why wouldn't you? Because you need several. Now, could you attempt to build a deck with just one tool? Could you try? You could try. It'd be difficult, and you might actually get to the finish line. You might turn that hammer over. You might try and use it as a screwdriver. You might try and actually hammer with it. You might try and use it as a level. You might actually build a deck. But then when people go and walk on it, what's going to happen? They're going to fall because that deck was not built sturdily. That's how estate planning works. When you use just the will, you're trying to build a deck with one tool, and it's going to fail. Every single adult over the age of 18 needs to have at least 4 things. Every adult needs to have a durable power of attorney. Every single adult. Once you turn 18 and we have that birthday celebration, they should also be filling out their durable power of attorney. Every adult over the age of 18 needs to have a last will and testament. Every single adult needs one. Every single adult needs to have a revocable living trust. Revocable living trust. There are 37 different types. Every adult over 18 needs a revocable living trust. And then every adult over the age of 18 needs to have a beneficiary designation. So those are the 4 things that every adult over 18 needs to have. Now, earlier, when you were asking the question, you said they had the power of attorney and they tried to use it. A power of attorney dies when the person dies. So if I designate my brother to serve as my power of attorney and then I die, my brother has lost all authority to act on my behalf because I'm dead. And dead people don't need attorneys. I don't personally agree with that because I think everybody needs attorneys. But the law says that dead people don't need attorneys. That's when a last will and testament kicks in. So when I'm alive, my durable power of attorney allows me to designate somebody to act on my behalf. When I die, my will allows me to designate an executor who acts on my behalf. And even more importantly, I don't want my executor acting on my behalf. I want my successor trustee to act on my behalf. And that's because the trust should own everything. I don't own anything. I don't own any homes. I don't own any vehicles. I don't own any bank accounts. I don't own any brokerage accounts because the trust owns everything. So that way, if one of you all say that guy in that suit did me wrong and I'm going to sue him, you can win, and do you know what you're going to get? You're going to get nothing. And that's the reason why every adult over the age of 18 needs a trust. So, to go back to your original questions, when everything is owned by the trust never dies. Mario dies, and Mario has a lot of debt because Mario likes to spend a lot of money. Thank you. One of my few talents. Spending money is one of always wanted to do it. And I learned that I can do it, and my daughter doesn't inherit my debts. Because if I don't own the property, she doesn't have to deal with the debts of Mario. So that's how we separate them. And that's how you ensure that the car loan doesn't go to the person who inherits. But the key is that you have to take the property out of the name of the owner and put it into the name of the trust. And that's so frequently what doesn't happen. They might go and make the trust, but they don't transfer the deed out of the name of the person into the name of the trust. They have to go to the Will County Recorder of Deeds right here in Joliet and actually record the deed that says Mario Reed no longer owns it. The Black Wall Street Legacy Revocable Living Trust owns it, which is what happened with the property that's in Monee, Illinois. So now, if Mario Reed dies, that property has nothing to do with the debts of Mario Reed. And that's the key. Yes, ma'am. Yes. So I'm going to repeat those 4 things again. Every adult over the age of 18 needs to have a durable power of attorney. That's number 1. A last will and testament. That's number 2. A revocable living trust. That's number 3. And a beneficiary designation. That's number 4. Beneficiary designations, everybody should have that. Who here has a checking account? Perfect. Who here has a vehicle? Perfect. Who here has life insurance? Perfect. All of those items need to have a beneficiary designated. Because who's going to live on this earth forever? Apparently Skylar is. Great job, Skylar, the immortal. Yes.
If you have a beneficiary designator and a trust,
Do they coincide? So the question was, if you have a beneficiary designated and you have a trust, do they coincide? So that's a fantastic question, and some might think that you're a plant, because these questions are very poignant questions. So you should never have people as beneficiaries. You should never have people as beneficiaries. And you looked at me as if though I was the scum of the earth. What? Oh, so say that again for me.
My daughter is my beneficiary.
His daughter is his beneficiary. What does everybody think about that? We think it's a good idea. Raise your hand if you think that's a good idea. Okay? Raise your hand if you think that's a bad idea. Raise your hand if you're not sure. So this gentleman said because they inherit the debt. Nope. That's not why we are concerned about it. The reason why it's a bad idea and why you should never designate a person, a human being, as a beneficiary is because what day is your daughter going to die? You don't know. So imagine if you and your daughter get in the car and you drive home. And because you're driving, because the man is always supposed to drive. Always. I think it even says it in the Bible. I haven't read all of the pages, but I'm confident it's in there. So because you're driving, you get into a car accident. And you pass away instantly because it was a head-on collision and you were driving, so you're out. Your daughter was in the back seat, and she's stronger than you because she's younger, so had more life to live, so she wanted to hang on. And she held on for a week after you passed. And then, unfortunately, she didn't make it. So now, what happens to all the stuff that you had her designated as the beneficiary on? So this gentleman said 2, she said contingency, and then this very assertive young man made it clear we have a contingency. What's a contingency? No, it's not what a contingency is. So when we watch the movies and they say I have a contingency plan, what that means is that if my first plan doesn't work, then I go. But that's not what second means. A contingency plan is my first choice died before my second choice. That's what a contingency means. But what happened in this scenario? But when did they die? A week apart. So because your daughter outlived you by a week, everything went to her. She just was preoccupied and wasn't able to call the insurance company, wasn't able to go to the bank. So now it all has to go through probate court. And now somebody's losing a lot of money because who is going to now get all of the stuff of the daughter? So we don't know. We don't know. Well, we don't know who's going to survive daughter. So what determines who gets the stuff is who is the heir of the daughter. Because the state says it goes to her heirs. But we don't know who her heirs are until she dies. And somebody said she doesn't have any, but everybody has heirs. Everyone has an heir. Right now, my daughter is 14. She doesn't have any children, thankfully. Let me knock on some wood. But if I pass away tomorrow and she passes away on Tuesday, she has an heir. Her heir is her biological mother. But the thing is we don't know, because it's not until someone dies that we figure out who is the heir. Because it's we, being whomever it is interested in getting the stuff. That's correct. And that's why we don't know. So I saw a lot of hands, and this is the part. So I'm going to.
I just want to know, how do you get the paperwork for the four things that you named?
Great question. The question is, how do you get your affairs in order? How do you get this paperwork? So my recommendation is always what I tell anyone when they ask me about if you need an oil change. If you need an oil change, what do? You take it to the professional. Why do you take that car to the professional? Because they know what they're doing. And more importantly, do you want to get underneath the car and do an oil change? I don't. Same concept. So when it comes time to get your affairs in order, I recommend go find a professional, because this is way more important than the oil change on that car. And if you're comfortable going to get the oil change from a professional, you should definitely be comfortable going to a professional to get your affairs in order. So that's a great question. Yes. Oh, thank you. So we're back to that. So you should never have people as beneficiaries. The trust. The trust should be the beneficiary for everything. It should either own the asset or it should be the beneficiary for the asset. So for my brokerage account, because I have an individual retirement account, which is an IRA, my trust is the beneficiary. For my life insurance policies, I have several trusts as the beneficiaries because I have multiple policies. For some of my brokerage accounts, the trust already owns the brokerage account. So I have the Milkshakes Make You Thirsty Legacy Revocable Living Trust. Did you all know that milkshakes make you thirsty? Everyone loves a milkshake. And I didn't know that milkshakes make you thirsty until my lovely, beautiful sister, who's back there in the pink, informed myself and all of my younger brothers that milkshakes make you thirsty. So now that's the name of the trust fund, which is for Kennedy and for Junior Damon, so that by the time they turn 40, they won't have to work anymore. And that's something we all can do and we all should do. And that's the reason why the trust is the beneficiary. Because when I die, if I have a life insurance policy for $100,000 and it goes to a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, what are they going to do with that $50,000 each? Hallelujah. They're going to spend it. And is that money going to make it to when they turn 40? No. But if the money goes to the trust, not only is it going to make it till they turn 40, but it's going to be 10 times as much when they do, because of what each of you should have in your hand, which is that handout. And hopefully everyone has one. Nope, you can keep it because everybody needs it. I just want to make sure everybody has one. So if you don't have a handout, please raise your hand, and hopefully we have enough. So, nope, so I have it memorized. Okay, yes, ma'am. Great question. So the question is, once your children reach a certain age, Do they have to pay taxes on the money that you left to them in the trust? So the answer is no. Your children don't have to pay money on the taxes, and the reason why is because who owns the money? The trust. So the trust is the person. So your children definitely wouldn't because they just reap the benefits. Now the trust might potentially have to pay taxes, but hopefully, if it's been set up properly, the trust wouldn't pay taxes either. In the state of Illinois, if you inherit money, that money has to eclipse more than $1 million in order for there to be the inheritance tax. So if you're leaving your children $1 million, then there's going to be some tax consequences. I suspect they might not mind it, though, because they got $1 million. However, if the money belongs to the trust, then they don't have to worry about it. Furthermore, we don't want to give anyone $1 million at one time. And that's the reason why it goes to the trust, and then every year on October 29th, that child can receive a distribution from the trust, and that avoids the tax consequences. And that's what all of you have in your hand, is a chart that shows how that happens. There were 2 more hands. So we're going to come here, and then we'll come back up here. So back here in the black, behind us.
So if you don't have a trust and only will and testament, the person that's deceased, how do you get the deed transferred into your name?
That's a great question. So our question was, if you don't have a trust and there's only a last will and testament, how do you get the deed out of the name of the deceased individual into the name of what's called the legatee, the person who's designated to get the property in the will? You got to go through probate court. And this is the part we've been missing out on, because we always thought, I got to go get my will together, without someone saying, no, you need much more than a will. A will has to be probated. If I imagine someone in here has a smartphone and the capabilities to go to Google, but somebody please look up the definition of a will. Go to Google and look up the definition of a will. As this is the part which all of us have had the opportunity, but unfortunately, it hasn't been presented to us in such a way that it was just plain and it was clear. What is the definition of a will?
Used to express desire, choice, willingness, consent, or in negative constructions, refusal. Used to express a command, exhortation, or injunction. Used to express frequent, customary, or habitual action or natural tendency or disposition. Used to express probability and often equivalent to the simple verb. Used to express inevitability.
According to CDC Foundation, a will or a last will and testament is a legal document that describes how you would like your property and other assets to be distributed after your death.
So, I apologize, because that was a will like I have will. So my apologies. So a will is used to say, I want this to happen when I die. But now let's do the opposite. Let's look up the definition of probate. So type in the definition of probate. What is the definition of P-R-O-B-A-T-E, probate? Every will needs to be probated. When you make the will, you're saying, I want a judge to declare that this is a valid will. From the very beginning, when you go and make the will, you're putting your loved ones on a track to go to probate court. They get so mad. Trust you me, because when I give them a price of what it's going to cost for them to go, they really get mad. Because when they start hearing thousands, they get really upset. Yes, ma'am.
So if there was a trust, there would be no need for probate.
There you go. When we take the property out of our name and put it into the name of the trust, we're striving to keep our loved ones out of probate. Now, it's not guaranteed that they won't have to go to probate because probate is for a lot of different things. But what we're doing is saying, I don't want them to go to probate for the house. I don't want them to go to probate for the life insurance policy. I don't want them to go to probate for the checking account, for the vehicles, for the brokerage accounts. Now, we are 4 years removed from one of the most memorable moments in American history. There was a police officer who put his knee on the neck of an innocent man. Yesterday was the 4-year anniversary of the passing of George Floyd. George Floyd allegedly died with nothing to his name. Police were called because he allegedly had a counterfeit $20 bill. However, his estate is now worth over $33 million. His daughter lost $8 million because he didn't have a will, he didn't have a trust, and he didn't designate beneficiaries. We don't know how we're going to pass. If an Amazon truck runs me over, my daughter still has to go to probate court because the judge has to say the money is supposed to go to the trust. That's what my will says. But my daughter doesn't have to go to probate to deal with the houses. She doesn't have to go to probate to deal with the bank accounts, with the brokerage accounts, with the life insurance policies. Or Mario's debt. That is correct. So the will takes care of stuff we don't know about. I want for my body to be donated to science when I pass. That's in the will. There was a store manager at US Cellular who was the worst store manager I ever had. And I disinherited him in my will just to be petty. That's what a will is for. The trust takes care of the stuff we know about. The will takes care of the stuff we don't know about. Like if Amazon runs me over, who I want to handle my affairs. You had another question.
So, you said something about that the deed needs to be in the trust name.
Yes.
Is that something that's done when the trust is established, or is that done post-mortem?
So great question. So she used the term post-mortem. And for those of us who didn't go to law school, post-mortem means after you're dead. So in the state of Illinois, and I want to be clear, the information that I'm sharing relates to Illinois. Every state is different. So if you live in Indiana, they have different laws. If you live in Virginia, they have different laws. Everything I'm discussing relates to Illinois. In the state of Illinois, the property has to be transferred into the name of the trust during the lifetime of the owner in order for it to be a valid transfer. If it doesn't happen while the person is alive, then it can never happen. Mm-hmm.
So how would you know that that's what took place or not? Is that only recorder of deeds will confirm?
That's correct. So anyone can go and look up the deed for any property in the state of Illinois. You can go to the if you're in Cook County, you can go to the Cook County Clerk's office. If you're in Will County, you can go to the Will County Recorder of Deeds. Every single person who owns property needs to go and look at the recorder's website to make sure that you own it, because you may not own it. You might think you own it, and you don't. And the reason why is because it's very easy for someone to steal your property. All somebody has to do is go to Microsoft Word and type up a deed that says out of the goodness of your heart, you gave your property to them. They then get that deed notarized. They take it to the Will County Recorder of Deeds office. They pay $50, and they have just stolen your property. So the question is without a signature. So when it comes to your signature, it's very easy to get your signature. Because when you bought the house, did you buy it in cash? No. What? You bought it with the mortgage. Did you sign that mortgage? That mortgage has your signature, usually in at least 3 different places. I now have your signature. I just snip your signature with my tool in Microsoft Word, and then I put that right on the new deed where you gave it to me. Thank you for being so generous. Okay, there we go. Happy Sunday to me. So it's very easy for someone to steal your home. Now, on that note, no one said anything about legit. Just like it's not legit to kill people and steal people's cars. There's a whole lot of non-legitimate things happening in this world. Everybody has the opportunity, though, to sign up for what's called the fraud alert, the free fraud alert. So you can go to the Will County Recorder of Deeds office website, and you can register for the free property fraud alert service. You can put in your email, you can put in your phone number, and if a document is recorded against your property's records, you'll receive an email and a phone call telling you that document was recorded. And then you'll go take a look and see, was this a good, legitimate document? If it was, because you paid off the mortgage, or because you refinanced, or because you transferred your property into the name of your trust, everything's okay. But if you didn't do anything, now you can tell the recorder's office, somebody's trying to steal my property, and then you can sort through all those details. Now, there was a question over here, and we'll come back. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to pay her taxes. Would they be able to tell me if someone stole her property?
Great question. So the question is, just pay taxes. Will the treasurer's office, because that's where you'll pay the property taxes, will they be able to tell you if someone stole mom's house? The answer is no. Because property taxes have nothing to do with ownership. That's one of the biggest mistakes that, again, within our community, we make the mistake of thinking, oh, the property tax bill showed up and it has my name on it, so I must be the owner. No. If you want, I'll change my property tax bill to your name, and then we'll just test it to be sure. You go ahead and pay the property taxes. You know what? Just to really be sure, pay it for about 3 or 4 years. And then we'll see how does it actually shake out. But I can promise you, you're not going to own that home. Me neither. I don't like you not paying my property tax bill either. I agree. The property tax bill has nothing to do with the ownership. The only document which establishes ownership is the deed. That's it. That's the only document. And if that document doesn't say the name we're hoping for, which is hopefully a trust, then that person doesn't own it. There was a question over here, and then we'll come back to the back. Okay. So the question is, how can I get in your business as much as possible? So I do not have a wife, so the wife doesn't come in. However, my daughter's mother is the successor trustee and the successor beneficiary of a $200,000 life insurance policy. Oh, so you're saying not me, Mario, but other people who decided to go and get married. There we go. Now we navigated this question. What's that? Oh. So, when it comes to estate planning, every single person in here is going to have a different setup. Estate planning is as unique as your fingerprints because some people like their wives, some people don't like their wives. Some people like their children, some people don't like their children. Some people have children, some people don't have children. So every single estate plan is going to be different. However, for every single estate plan, the trust should be the beneficiary, and then inside of the trust, you specify who gets the money and what happens with the money and when they get the money. So whether it's a wife, whether it's a daughter, whether it's a mailman, whether it's your caretaker, all of those details get outlined inside of the trust, and it doesn't matter what the role is because it's going to always work out the same way. That's correct. Earlier today, I went to a different church, and there was this man standing up in the pulpit talking on the microphone, and he told me, you got to get married. You got to get the piece of paper, because if you don't and something goes wrong, you don't get anything. And something that has always plagued me my whole life, I said, this man doesn't know what he's talking about. He is clueless. Because I do not need to go get legally married to ensure that somebody I care for gets 100% of everything I own. Because all I have to do is specify them as the beneficiary in my trust, and they get everything. I didn't have to go to the government and say, give me a piece of paper. I took advantage of the laws that are established to let me dictate who gets whatever I want. The law is intended to help us if we take advantage of it. If we don't go learn about it, we're going to run around and say, you got to do this, you got to do that. When no, I don't. I just have to get educated. And thankfully, you all are doing that. So I think we should give our host a round of applause for making it a priority. Yes, we'll take this question.
Oh, I just wanted to ask the fellow who said what he said in the pulpit, did you straighten him out so he never says it again?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I had to leave. I had to leave to come here. I had to leave to come here. So, I didn't get the chance. Yes, ma'am.
So, with the will and the last testament, how much power does the executor of the estate have? Question two, you said property taxes does not declare ownership of the home. So how do people get these houses by paying the property taxes? Is there another step they have to go through in order to own the home?
Great question. So the first question is, how much power does the executor of the estate have? The answer is, however much power the will bestows upon them. So if the will says that the executor has unfettered or unlimited power, which typically it does, that's the power that the executor has. But the executor is only going to be able to do whatever the will says. So in my case, the will says, donate my body to science. My daughter, even though she's the executor, she can't now unilaterally say, you know what, we're going to do this differently. I didn't give her that authority. I said, send my body to be donated and get that $200. So that's the authority she has. The will typically says the executor can do this and can't do that. So it's whatever the will says. The second answer is when it comes to so you asked about the will and then the taxes. So when somebody purchases taxes at what's called the scavenger sale or the annual tax sale, they're going through the legal process to put the government on notice that they wish to purchase the taxes and eventually go to court and apply for what's called a judicial tax deed. So they still have to get a deed. After they've paid those taxes, typically for at least 3 years, depending upon the circumstances, it might take as long as 6 years. Then they go to court and say, Your Honor, I've been paying these taxes. This irresponsible person hasn't. So let me have the property because I'm going to pay the taxes. And then the judge is going to say, well, did you try and find this person? Did you give them notice? Did you tell them that you want to take their house? And you'll say, yes, yes, yes. And then the judge will say, here is your tax deed. Go record it with the local recorder, and now you own the property. So they still have to get an actual deed. It's just that a judge signs off on it instead of the previous owner. Yes, ma'am.
If you have property or properties that are over $1 million and it's in a trust, and you have, a trustee over the trust or whatever, and they sell the property, well, the trust sells the property, do they have to pay the capital gains tax?
Great question. So the question is, if you have a property and the trust sells the property after the person has died, does the trust then have to pay capital gains taxes? So the answer is, it depends on what you want the trust to do with the money. And that's a great segue. Thank you for doing so. Everybody should have a handout. And if you don't, I apologize because I did not know that you all were so supportive. I only printed 45, and you guys packed the house, so I apologize. I'm not accustomed to this. So what you're looking at is how a trust fund works. How many of us have heard of a trust fund? How many of us know how a trust fund works? Xavier, you know how a trust fund works? Excellent job, Xavier. That man is good for you. So I used to think that you had to be a millionaire in order for a trust fund to work and for it to go. Nothing could be further from the truth. If you own a home, you can establish a trust fund that will create millionaires within 20 years of your passing. It's one of the most amazing things ever. How it works is that, let's say that I passed away in 2002. And again, I apologize because not everybody's going to have the same numbers on your handout, but it all works the same way. So whether your number in the top left says 300,000, 646,000, or 450,000, it's the same process. And that's why I have different numbers. So everybody understands it doesn't matter what the house's value is, it just has to follow the format. So in your top left-hand corner, what does the number say? 300,000, perfect. So let's say that you had a house that was for 300,000 and you passed away in 2002, or me, I passed away in 2002. Inside of the trust agreement, I specified that when I die, the house has to be sold within 6 months of my passing. And then the money is to go to the trust. When the house is sold, let's say that I had bought it for $100,000 30 years ago. How much was made off of the sale of that house? $200,000. That's what we all think, right? I got it for $100,000. It sold for $300,000. $200,000. Somebody said no. Who said no? Don't be ashamed now. Somebody said no. I heard somebody say. Whoever said no was right. That no, I didn't make $200,000 off that house because when I was living in the house, what did I have to pay? Property taxes, interest. I had to get the roof replaced, especially if I painted it yellow. Yes, ma'am.
I purchased my home. I put 20% down. I was already getting a steal. My home is, I've made, it's over $1 million,
Mm-hmm.
and I made over 600,000 in equity.
You're saying it appreciated.
It appreciated, so wouldn't that be?
No. So you didn't make anything.
And then, no, what I'm saying is like, so, although I'm paying mortgage and interest and things of that nature, right? So, but the purchase price that I paid for it, I accrued equity, and then let's say I sell it, and I have a bidding war. So then I sell it, let's say maybe like 1.2. So wouldn't all that wouldn't be included?
No. Because if I purchase something for $300,000 and it appreciates to $600,000, that's equity. With a house, you don't just pay the initial purchase price. You pay property taxes every year. You pay all of the upkeep throughout the entirety of the time you have it. All of that is your investment. Can you have a house and not pay property taxes? You won't have it for long. Unless you're a disabled veteran, more than 60%, 70%. So, again, we haven't been fully informed about how houses work. Because when I purchase a home and there's a mortgage, if you look at what's called the closing disclosure, it tells you if you take the full 30 years to pay this asset off, you will have paid 3 times as much for just the loan. So is that interest not part of the investment? So did I really gain if I had to pay 3 times as much as the interest? Could I have kept this house if I didn't pay the taxes? Would it have appreciated $600,000 if I didn't fix the roof when the leak came? All of those different expenses are a part of the investment. So, capital gains isn't as cut and dry as we like to pretend it is. Now, in this case, the property is going to be sold, and really quickly, the capital gain would only be the difference between the day you died and how much it appreciated to in that window of time. So if it was sold within a year and it appreciated $32,000 in that year, that would be the capital gain. Does anybody know what the threshold is before you have to pay a tax on a capital gain, a long-term capital gain? No. So every year it changes. But in 2023, the capital gain, long-term capital gains, I buy a stock and I hold it for more than a year, and then I sell it, that's a long-term capital gain. The threshold was $46,000. Every year, it increases a little bit. Next year, it'll probably be 47. Year after that, be 48. So if the house would have appreciated $46,000, you wouldn't pay anything. And that's nothing. And that's important because now we'll go back to our handout. Because we sold the house in 2002 and we got $300,000. Instead of giving the $300,000 to my daughter, because I don't have a wife, my daughter, the $300,000 went to the trust. And then all $300,000 was used to purchase the S&P 500. Has anyone ever heard of the S&P 500? Standard & Poor's top 500 stocks. Instead of you trying to figure out which one is going to be good, just get the best 500. Make it easy on you. Make it easy on your beneficiary. So they took the $300,000 and used it to purchase the Standard & Poor's top 500 stocks. And every subsequent year on October 29th, Whatever the gain is, my daughter gets 50%. What was the return percentage for 2003? In the column that says return percentage, what was the return percentage? 28.39%. The Standard & Poor's appreciated by 28.39% in 1 year. That's a fantastic return, especially since my daughter didn't do anything. She didn't go work a job. She didn't sell anything. She simply was the beneficiary of a trust. Now, for the $300,000 amount, what was the dollar amount? $85,170. How many of you would like to receive $85,000 for doing nothing? Now, there's somebody who has $450,000 as the top left-hand corner of their chart. Who has 450? What does yours say for the dollar amount? Yes, sir. 127,000. So the house was 450, and in 1 year, it created 127,000. Now somebody else has a chart that says 646, and $183,000 in 1 year. My daughter didn't work a job. She didn't go sell anything. I told her, sell the house, take the money, invest it in the S&P 500. Wait until October 29th of the next year, which is my birthday, and whatever the gain was, I want you to sell half of it. I don't even want you to sell the whole thing. I want you to sell half. So what's half of that number? She got $91,000 that year. In 2003, a year after I died, she got $91,000. She can do whatever she wants with it. She's going to blow it. But I want her to. It's in the gene pool. She got the 91. Now, the trust has to pay capital gains taxes. You asked about paying the taxes. It was over $46,000. For the amount that's over $46,000, it gets taxed at just 15%. Less than what we get taxed on our wages. So, let me finish. So, those taxes come out before she gets the check. So, 15% of 40, Tez, what's that math? 90, 96 and so 50, 10, and 5, $7,500. So she didn't get 91,000, she got 83,000 to do whatever she wishes with. Spend it however she likes, go on whatever trip she wants, it's all hers for the first year. And then next year, we're going to do it all over again. For the rest of her natural life, we're going to do it all over again. And then when she passes, her children are going to do it all over again. In 200 years from after I have left this earth, there are going to be millionaires running around on October 29th of each year celebrating somebody who they never even met. And that's how a trust fund works. Now, you had several more questions that came to you, so let's go.
I'm excited.
Yes.
Okay. So, right? I really like this. So,
Me too.
can we get paid in a trust?
Can you get paid in a trust?
Split our income, like whatever our pay is. And let's say we take a portion in our name, and then we set up a trust that specifically gets the other half of the income. And we do this S&P thing.
Yes.
And then, so after a year, it accrues.
Yes.
Because we're That's not fraud.
There's enough fraud at all.
Because if we're gonna be paying less in taxes, can we do that?
So, absolutely you can.
That's all I
Absolutely. And I want to point out where it's definitely not fraud because she says she was taking her pay. So the tax liability has already been paid. So that already happened. What it is that you're really thinking and talking through is the same thing that hit me when I first learned about it. Is why do I want to keep working when the money can do the work for me? And that's what it is that this taught me as well. So my goal is that as soon as the interest rates come down, I'm going to pull out every penny worth of equity that I have in every property I own. And I'm going to invest it all in the S&P 500. And it takes 4 years on average for that money to double. 4 years. I then sell off the gain, pay off the mortgages, and am left with all the money that was gained in that 4-year period. And then I live off of half of the gain for the rest of my natural life. Yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. And if we can get the microphone, yes. I'm sorry, we'll come back over here. When the interest rate's good. So we'll go ahead, yep. No, I'm going to do a true refi, cash out refi. Cash out refi. Yeah.
Okay, so I did everything you told me to do. I went and saw an attorney, got all my 4 documents together. My information and stuff is in order. I pass away. My child or my spouse is this person. And now I'm gone. They're still here. Do they need an attorney to execute all of these things for them? Or can I now just walk into the bank, the life insurance place, the deed, the whoever, and get all of this stuff with my documents by myself? Or do me and my attorney go to court, have one appointment, and say, here's how you notify this person, this person, this person, and keep it moving?
Great question. So, if you went to a fantastic attorney, I do, then whomever is your successor trustee, your spouse, your child, your sibling, they get to do everything all on their own without any inclusion of an attorney. And they don't even have to go anywhere. They can execute all of this from the comforts of their own home. They pick up the phone and they call the insurance company. The insurance company gives them your condolences for your loss and says, send me the death certificate. They send the death certificate, and usually 30 to 60 days later, the insurance company sends them a check made out to the Milkshakes Make You Thirsty Legacy Revocable Living Trust. Your successor trustee takes a picture of the check and deposits the funds right into the brokerage account. A day later, when the funds clear, they execute the trade on their phone for the $300,000 worth of the S&P 500, and they're done. Okay? All right, so we'll go back over here because apparently I've been missing questions over here. Okay. Thank you.
Question. Thank you so much for this great information.
Thank you.
So you told us that we should not leave like life insurance policies to an individual. It should be left to,
The trust.
a trust. So let's say I work for the United States Postal Service, and I want to leave it to a trust, but some of their verbiage tells me that I have to leave it if I'm married to a spouse. Or let's just say I don't even want to leave it to a trust. I want to leave it to a daughter or a nephew or grandmother, but they tell me that I have to leave it to a spouse. I don't have a choice in that. How do I get by that to say, hey, I want to leave it to my trust versus leaving it to my spouse?
That's a great question, because somebody over here asked me earlier, why is it not being left to the wife? And apparently, she should have been asking you that question instead of me. However, what you're referring to isn't the life insurance policy. You're referring to your retirement account. You're referring to the pension, the 401k, the defined benefit. Right. So FEGLI is different.
The life insurance, they have a portion where the life insurance, and sometimes we have an issue with families, like if someone dies and they say, hey, I wanted to go to my niece or my daughter, but they have a wife, and let's
Right.
say the wife is estranged.
Yep.
A lot of times that wife is the beneficiary automatically. So then
Yes.
the one who we intend to be the beneficiary cannot utilize that to close out any debt, whether it be funeral expenses, burial expenses, or what have you. Then we're left with a bill, or my daughter or
Niece
sister's
or
left with a bill. So how do I get around that to say, hey, I want this to strictly go to my trust if my job is saying that this is their rule or this is their law, I guess?
Yes. So, great question. Thank you for asking it. So there's a law which is called ERISA, E-R-I-S-A, ERISA. And that was the law that the federal government put in place and said, we want to make sure that spouses are taken care of when the other spouse dies. It typically only applies to retirement accounts, 401ks, pensions, and then employer-issued life insurance policies. So that's what you're referring to. How you get around that, or how anyone gets around that, is they go to their spouse and say, hey, I want to do this estate planning. I need you to sign off on it. And as long as the spouse does, then you're good. You have to turn in that extra form. It oftentimes has to be notarized. Now, if the spouse is estranged, then you need to go through the process to get divorced. And I don't say that facetiously. I don't say that tongue-in-cheek. I say that seriously, because that same person who stood in the pulpit early today and told me, if you don't get that piece of paper, they don't get anything, it only works in reverse. They get everything. Well, 50% in the state of Illinois, 50% to descendants, but it only complicates things. So if you are married to an estranged spouse, you need to get unmarried to that estranged spouse. And you can go through the process through publication, take out an ad in the Daily Law Bulletin, tell the world this person's nowhere to be found, and then the judge will eventually say, here's your dissolution of marriage. But for those people who don't necessarily want to get divorced and they just want to have it go to their trust, they can have that spouse sign off on the agreement, and you just request that from FEGLI, OPM. They have it. It takes work, but you got to do it. And it's too important to leave it to whomever's going, because as you said, the niece and the daughter, they're not going to be able to get around it. The other part is that you should never rely on your employer-issued life insurance policy. You should never, ever, ever rely on your employer-issued life insurance policy. Oftentimes, the only way that you're going to get, or somebody's going to get that money, is you got to die while you're still working. And we hope that doesn't happen. We want you to retire. Furthermore, you need to ask them, does this insurance policy offer portability? Portability. That's when you can take the policy with you when you retire. They oftentimes will say yes, but then forget to tell you it's going to cost you 4 times as much for the monthly premium after you leave. I recommend, and this is what I've done for myself, I get term life insurance. And I get it for 30 years. And the reason why is because I don't think I'm going to live to be 70. So everybody can make all the sounds they want, but when you go look at the average life expectancy of a black man, it's not 70. I'm very realistic about this thing called life. It's what I do for a living. Now, does that mean that I don't want to live past 70? No, that's not what that's saying. But the reason why I chose 30 is because the average life expectancy is less than 70. With the money that I save on that term life insurance policy, I put it into the S&P 500, and then if I do outlive, I get all of that money as appreciation, and I get to enjoy the money while I'm alive. So I make sure that my loved ones are good with the term life policy, but I make sure I'm better with the brokerage account in outliving that policy. Now, I've been told that we're already at 2:45.
One more question.
So we got one more, 2:50. So we got one more question.
So here's a question. I'm just going back briefly. That's me talking.
Oh, yes.
Going back to when you were talking about the transfer and the conveyance of property and deeds.
Yes, sir.
So post-mortem, using my sister's word there. So is there, I'm speaking about me personally, I'm a beneficiary of a transfer
On death instrument. A toady.
Right, that's reported and that's recorded so I wanted to speak specifically as relates to probate.
Yes.
And the benefits thereof. So that's my question. Speaking about that.
Okay. So there are no benefits to probate except for me, the attorney who gets paid when somebody goes to probate. So probate is not a place that anybody should ever be. Please do everything you can to keep your loved ones out of probate. If everybody's in agreement and there's no fight, it costs $4,000 to go through the probate process. If somebody's not agreeing, you're looking at well over $8,000. Now, you asked about the transfer on death instrument.
Does that avoid probate?
So the transfer on death instrument hopefully will avoid probate. And I say hopefully because remember, why don't we ever want to put people as beneficiaries? Because we don't know when they're going to die. So you're listed as the beneficiary. Whoever's the owner of the house, are you all ever in the same place at the same time? You shook your head, no. Why are they giving you a house if they don't ever want to be around you? So sometimes, it's rare possibly, in that rare occasion, you pass first. Now, my hope is that on that transfer on death instrument, they have a contingency beneficiary. In that scenario, it would go to them. But let's go back to our first scenario. The owner passes on Monday, you pass on Tuesday, now what happens to the house? It's got to go through probate. And it goes to your heirs after they've went through the probate process. We don't want that. The other part that I like to make sure everybody understands is that when you use a transfer on death instrument, you're specifying a beneficiary, which only occurs when you die. However, has anyone ever known someone to have to go on Medicaid? We know someone that had to go on Medicaid. Mom lived to 80. Mom's health declined. Mom's still the owner. And then she has to go into a senior living facility, a nursing home. Doesn't have $22,000 a month to pay the facility. So she goes on to Medicaid. Now Medicaid is going to give her $22,000 a month for the next 4 years of her life. And when she dies, a lien in the amount of $250,000 goes against the property. All because she owned the property. Whereas if the property was in the name of the trust, now she goes into the facility and the Medicaid cannot put a single dollar against the property. The trust protects the house while she's alive and when she passes. Now, I was told that we have one more question, but apparently...
Yes, it's got two parts.
Okay.
What is the average cost to set up a trust, and how long does it take once you begin the process?
Great questions. So I always tell everyone when I do these that I will never quote a price for how much it costs for a trust, because the last thing I want is anybody to leave thinking that I solicited business. So the average can range from 500 to as much as 5,000. But my hope is that whoever you go with, make sure you have an extended conversation about what your goals are. Because you might want the house to be sold. You might want the house to be kept. You might want for it to always be rented out. All of that is part of the trust. Our information is on that handout. So on the handout with all the numbers on it, our information is on there. If you want to reach out and ask questions, we're happy. But I did not come here to solicit anybody's business, and I am not here for anything other than to help us understand we need to get our affairs in order. That's it. You had the two-part question, so the cost and then the time. So on average, it takes us a total of 6 weeks to complete everything from start to finish. The first part of the process is we have a pre-estate planning worksheet where you go through and make those tough decisions. Who do you want to be your successor trustee? Who do you want to be your successor beneficiary? Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be on life support? Do you want to be on a ventilator? Do you want to be put into a home? Who do you want to disinherit? And then we have a conversation and we talk through everything. Make sure that it's right the way you want. Then it takes us 3 weeks to prepare the documents. Then you come back, you sign the documents in front of our 2 credible disinterested witnesses, the notary, and we videotape you signing. Because sometimes people forget things after you pass. So we want video proof that it was your desire for little Billy to be disinherited. We then go get the documents recorded with the clerk's office or the recorder of deeds office. We make a total of 3 sets of the documents. 2 get bound, and there's 1 black and white loose leaf to separate them if there's a fire or a flood, and then everything's done. Okay.
Wow. Okay, go ahead, wrap up.
One question.
Yes, sir. Great question. So am I in favor of universal index life insurance policies? So the answer is no. I am not in favor of that because how the index universal life insurance policy works is that they're giving you a whole life policy usually, and then they're taking extra money and they are investing it into the S&P 500. They're capping how much you get.
Right.
They say, I'll give you 6%, even if it made 28.39%. So if that's the case, why don't you just go get that money?
Right.
And then you get the full 28.39%. So every month, I do a knowledge movement session. Unfortunately, it's out in South Holland, which is a bit of a ways. But at those knowledge movement sessions, which are free and open to the public, I explain how you can start a brokerage account in the name of the trust, how you can purchase the S&P 500. If you have $63, you can purchase the S&P 500 right now. All my life, I thought you had to have thousands of dollars. $62 can get you the S&P 500. If you would have taken $10,000 in 1981 and put that into the S&P 500, today it would be worth $1.1 million. That was the year I was born, and it compounds and appreciates that fast. So I recommend always go straight to the source, and you get the most of your money for everything that you get. Thank you for that question. All right, so thank you all for coming out. Thanks so much to our host, the pastor, and everyone, as I greatly appreciate it, and I'm now turning it back over.
Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere.
Hold on, Carl. Mother Wilson, because you see your mother, I'm going to let you ask this.
For the sake of ministry,
Yes.
this ministry, this may not be in the right setting, a charitable trust annuity. Are you familiar how to set those up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Awesome. So thank you all so very much. My name is Carmen Carter, Carter Realty Group. Thanks so much to the pastor who has allowed us the opportunity to come in and bring you all so much information and knowledge. It is our passion. Me and him, we walk and talk, and so we just finally said, we're going to do it. We're going to do it, and we're going to continuously do it. And hopefully Attorney Reed, although he does that in the south suburbs, if we get him some more people, maybe he will do it locally for us, right? Because this is good information, yes or no? Absolutely. So thank you so very much. We genuinely appreciate it. But before you all leave, they always say to document the experience. So if you all can come up here and take a picture with everybody so we can have it documented. And also, too, what you should know about this man is he has over 300 5-star reviews on Google. So this man is legit. Okay, that's very important to know because reviews are everything. I'm telling you, they tell the truth online. They tell the truth about you. They don't tell the truth, but they do tell the truth about you.
So before everyone comes up, Attorney Reed did not, he didn't come to commercialize himself, but I'm going to commercialize him. And I want you to make sure that you get his information and you set up an appointment. This is just the beginning. This was for us to open the door. Now, as I stated earlier in my message, now you've listened, you've got to do the labor and you've got to follow through. And so I don't want you to come and hear this information, walk away, and we'll be back in the same predicament next year. We have to act now so that we can be able to continue to leave a legacy for our family. So I want you to, that money I told you go and spend to buy and waste away on stuff, use that money to invest in a professional aiding and assisting you to make sure that your house is in order. Amen? So please get his information when this is all said and done. Again, All Nations, please give Attorney Reed a round of applause. Matter of fact, I believe I stand up here. You have to pay a lot of money to go to a lot of these conferences. And he did this in partnership with Carter Realty. And I want to thank Carmen, my cousin. Listen, she has done a phenomenal job. Again, we've talked about a lot of things as far as empowering our people in the community. We finally said, let's just make this happen. She says, hey, I'll provide the food, I'll bring the guests, I'll get everything situated, you provide the location, and we're going to make it happen. Let's give Carmen Carter another round of applause. All right, come on now, let's take his picture.
Also, I just wanted to let you know you guys will be getting a survey for those who signed up for the workshop in the beginning. So that survey would give us feedback as to how we can improve the seminars, even maybe break the seminars up or add content to the seminars for next time. So please, please take the time to fill out those surveys. Those are very important so we can continue the mission, okay?